Knowing and experiencing is to the extreme. What do I mean? To just know something is one thing, yet the experience of what you claim to know would be as extreme as playing war as a child and watching war movies thinking you have experienced war. Many times our religious knowing by just reading the Bible and experience of those who wrote about their living experience is the same. Not until you have the living experience of what you've just read in that book does it hit home. For example, in me, that is my flesh, there dwells no good thing. Easy to read this quote coming from the Apostle Paul, yet it's quite the contrary to living such a moment. The experience of just this one text would drop you to your knees, pounding your chest and saying, as Paul said, "Who will deliver me from this embodiment of death?" It says that it slew him, discovering that he had spent his life up to that moment thinking that concerning the law and keeping it, he was perfect. Little did he know, till the law's purpose accomplished its good work, a work of getting him to see his condition, being cut off from his spirit and living his life out of his rogue soul, never hearing from the Father of his spirit, leaning on following the so-called fathers of his flesh, being born a Hebrew among Hebrews and circumcised on the 8th day. Think of this following text expressed by Jesus that lets us know that apart from him we can do nothing. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abideth in me and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. What would it take for you to experience this text? To answer this, you would have to, at some point in your life, become helpless, unable to do what you have always done in your natural strength, totally independent from knowing that in him we live and move and have our very being. Acts 17:28, for in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for you are also his offspring. That come from pagan poets that knew more than the so-called self-righteous religious people of the Paul's day knew and understood. Paul had come to understand this, that day reveals to them what he called the unknown God. He made a statue to this unknown God. They knew that they were the offspring of God, but they didn't understand how that was possible. They didn't know this God. And Paul revealed to them that day at Mars Hill, Areopagus, where they came together to debate with their philosophy, opinions and ideas of men, not knowing anything about who this unknown God was. He revealed to them the unknown God, and he revealed to them Jesus. Why Jesus? He was the living expression of the Son of God, manifest as the Son of Man, speaking for the sons of men, a way back to the Father, letting them know that they were the offspring of God. Weren't manifested as that way, but were manifested as sons of men, cut off from God, unaware, and needing to be woke up to that fact. Not going with some secular idea or self-righteous religious idea. The answer to this dilemma of our helpless condition once discovered is expressed in another religious quote that required a living experience to really understand it. Comes out Philippians 4:13, Paul again speaking. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. Many, unaware, thinking this referring to their natural strength that they had developed most of their lives through some body exercise or being taught through some educational system developed by men in the name of man, by the power of man, to the glory of man, what's called secular humanism. This many times gets carried over into their religious lives that only mimics what Paul had come to experience after being knocked off his high horse and then blinded, needing someone to guide him in his helpless condition. The living experience of these few Bible verses, and others like them, is beyond anything we could have imagined. If we had known at the time of getting involved with what Jesus was offering, expressed many times by some ministers in a shallow way, not having experienced it himself, but he's expecting his congregation to know experience, if we had known up front, and were told that it would not be a bed of roses, that which they were being taught in the comforts of an air-conditioned building, we might have not gotten involved. Count the cost. It wasn't the way that Jesus introduced what the Father to him was offering. You read it in Luke 14:28. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and count the cost, whether he has sufficient to finish it? I tell you this, in and of yourself, you're not sufficient, and you have to find that out. That apart from him, you can do nothing, but through Christ, you can do all things. That's your sufficiency in Christ. I remember about 5 years ago, I was about 68 years of age at that time, and I always longed to raise the roof on my house. It was almost flat, had very low pitch. It kept leaking, I had to keep repairing it. So I said, one day I'm going to raise that roof at least 5 foot, greater pitch, so the water will run off. Well, I was 68 years of age and I did that. When did I start? How did I start? I didn't really know. A little bit of carpentry experience I had. I went up there one day and just started tearing out the roof. I stripped out the whole middle of that roof. And then I'm sitting up there looking down thinking to myself, my God, what have I done? What have I done? I couldn't stop. I had to finish it. I mean, I went for 2 months with the help of my son, taking that whole roof off that house and raising up another roof. With roofers, plywood, ice and water shield, shingles. In between all that time, rainstorms coming up, windstorms coming out. One night, I was out there, a lightning storm, because it blew off the tarps. And I'm sitting there weeping, saying, my God, what have I done? Help me. And he did. In 2 months' time, my son and I had that roof up. It hasn't leaked since that time. And it will never leak, not in my lifetime. That roof is good for the next 50 years. It's just showing that you count the cost. But I knew that apart from him, I couldn't do this. But through him, I could. And he did. I mean, the experience of that, I can tell you about that. Maybe some of you have had such experiences. Count the cost. But knowing that in of yourself, you're not sufficient yourself to do anything or to evaluate anything. It's through him that you live and move and have your being. If you would only remember that, you can do all things through Christ that strengthens. This mind of Christ is locked up in your human spirit, waiting to be worked out. And it takes crises and situations to get you to discover that. It's after you think you knew something that you begin to learn. It's after your human strength has waned. 68 years of age, and people thought I was crazy. You're going to get up there and have a heart attack. No, I didn't. I was able to do it with the assistance of my son and our Father. That's just some idea. That's just a few verses. There's so many verses that you couldn't possibly begin to experience what this Bible's teaching you. You can't mimic it. You can't fake it. You know a faker. It's got to be real. I tell you, little I know, it's real. And I hope and pray to God that it's real for you. God bless.